Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government what early assessment it has made following the opening of the safer drug consumption facility, the Thistle.
Cabinet Secretary Neil Gray.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I'm very pleased that the Thistle has started supporting its first service users as of yesterday. Early engagement information will be reported in due course, but I understand that uptake was good, taking into account the presence of some media near the entrance and that this was the very first day of a unique service. There was, however, very positive feedback from the first service users. So I would like to thank all involved in getting the service up and running, the staff, those from the various engagement groups and those from the local community for their support for this facility and those relentless campaigners that allowed this to happen.
Douglas Ross.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Can I use my first question to look at the policing of this facility? And I remind the Chamber that my wife is a serving officer with Police Scotland. The Lord Advocate and the police have said people will not be prosecuted for drug possession within the facility. But can the Cabinet Secretary outline what the Government expects to happen out with the facility? For example, what is the Cabinet Secretary and the Government's view of someone in possession of drugs on their way to the facility? Should those drugs be removed if the police have good cause to stop them and find them in possession of the drugs? And what is the Cabinet Secretary's response to concerns in the local community that the area could become a criminal hotspot if the police are not policing immediately outside the new facility?
Cabinet Secretary.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I thank Douglas Ross for his question, and he'll understand that this is an operational matter for Police Scotland. It wouldn't be right for me to comment on nor influence the decisions that they make. However, Police Scotland have been involved in the development of this proposal from the beginning. I'm very grateful for their support. It wouldn't have been possible to reach this point without their collaboration and partnership working. As part of the proposal which went to the Lord Advocate, Police Scotland provided a paper which was signed off by the Chief Constable, which clearly set out their position. That paper makes clear that the role of police officers and explains how the area surrounding the safer drug consumption facility would be policed in the same manner as it was prior to the establishment of the facility, unless otherwise required due to any new identified risk. So Police Scotland will not alter the approach that they take to patrolling a community as a result of this facility open and ensure all communities in Scotland receive the same standard of service.
Douglas Ross.
There's still a lot of uncertainty surrounding the policing, and I don't think that will be answered by the Cabinet Secretary's response there. He says it's a matter for Police Scotland. Police Scotland are saying it's a matter for the Crown Office. But ultimately, this is a facility that is supported by the Scottish Government, and I don't think it's unreasonable for parliamentarians to expect a response to this here today. Can I, however, look at the facility in more general detail? Can I ask the Cabinet Secretary what he believes will be a success of this pilot project? Over the next 3 years, how will he judge it a success or otherwise? And does he accept, as the First Minister said yesterday, this is not a silver bullet? We need more joined-up working across this area. For example, if people go in there to inject themselves with drugs but need mental health support, they will still face lengthy waiting lists, and there is still a huge shortage of rehabilitation beds in Scotland. So is it not the case that this facility will simply make it more sustainable for people to remain on drugs rather than getting off drugs, turning their lives around, and by backing the Right to Recovery Bill, that would be another element in our fight against the appalling drug death rate here in Scotland?
Cabinet Secretary.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I accept that this is one tool in the box. It's not the silver bullet, as Douglas Ross describes it as. He asks about how we would measure the success over the 3 years of the pilot. This is about reducing harm and reducing deaths within Glasgow. It's also about allowing people who have we've been otherwise unable to reach in terms of the treatment options that Douglas Ross speaks about, coming in and accessing services that are available within the facility itself. So that is the basis upon which the Lord Advocate gave her statement of prosecution policy, which was that this was about allowing people to get access to a service that otherwise they would not have been able to get access to. So that is the first opportunity for many people to have those conversations around the likes of mental health support, around other treatment options such as residential rehabilitation. And it's also not an either-or scenario. This is additional funding that we're putting in here, alongside the additional funding that we've put into the likes of residential rehabilitation beds that have seen those bed numbers rise by 20% since 2021, because we recognise that this is a national mission that has to be focused on all possible forms of intervention that can save lives, because I agree with Douglas Ross, the situation is appalling and one that we must face, but we must make sure that we take all possible steps, including those that feel radical, like this one, to ensure that we get to all of those people that can potentially benefit from the services that are available across Scotland.
Thank you. There is much interest, and I'd be grateful for concise questions and responses. I call Claire Haughey.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. And I remind Chamber I'm employed as a bank nurse by Greater Glasgow and Clyde NHS. Every death related to drug use is one too many and utterly devastating for those loved ones left behind. And while this facility is not a silver bullet, I'm proud of this significant step to reduce harms and deaths in one of Scotland's most impacted cities. Can the Cabinet Secretary speak to how the Scottish Government engaged with those with lived experience and families to ensure the facility met the needs and best supports service users?
Cabinet Secretary.
Yes, I thank Claire Haughey for her question, and I absolutely agree with her that a life lost to a drug dependency is one life too many. And I was able, alongside the First Minister, to speak to bereaved families that were part of the process of establishing the Safer Drug Consumption Facility when we visited the facility on Friday, as well as others with lived experience who have helped in the design of the facility, the way that it looks, the way that it feels, right the way down to being part of the interview panel for some of the staff to make sure that the cultural aspects of who is employed and how they approach their work is informed by lived experience. That is absolutely critical to the confidence of the community in the facility and of service users with it, but also in making sure that the endeavours that we're seeking to address around reducing harm and reducing the number of deaths are able to be addressed as well. And I'm very grateful for all those with lived experience, as well as service users and bereaved families, for the input that they have had in getting the Thistle to this point.